Well, thanks for coming. I'm Michael Bedar. So I'll be speaking on sweet healing, and also if you saw it online, the title was Health from Generation to Generation. Thank you for spending a Sunday afternoon here. As I usually do, since I've traveled to 25 states in the last 4 months by car, a lot of miles, so I indulge myself in just a moment to arrive and feel myself grounded. So maybe we can have the best experience together and you can get what you need. So if you would join me in just arriving with a few breaths, please. Thank you. So my story leads to here through about 8 years of research, study, coaching, and the process of putting pen to paper in a creative fashion. I will go into the story. We'll talk about what leads me to be presenting around the country today. And I'd also like to hear from you along the way, questions that you may have, and also why you're here. How many of you are here because you are currently in a proactive stage of wanting to heal yourself, like in an immediate issue that you're going to improve? Thank you. Some of you. Great. Okay, and how many of you are here for someone else you know that's in that state that you'd like to offer more to them? Someone you love. Okay, cool. How many are the food provider for somebody other than yourself in a home? Okay, awesome. A few more that are frequent, like people that are healing practitioners of some kind, amateur to professional, kind of somewhere on that spectrum. Great, okay. And then, how many people are actually just curious about how it was that all this nutritional and healing science could be written in something creative like a fiction novel? Okay, cool, and why? Maybe why too. So, any other reasons that are pressing that people want to tell me, like this is the reason that they're in this room at 2:45 today? Okay, well, we mostly must have covered it. So, hello. So hello friends and hello new friends too. So I began this process about 9 years ago. I began a master's program at the Cousins School of Holistic Wellness, founded by Dr. Cousins, who's spoken here year in and year out, except for skipping a few, like this year. But I was interested in the subject of, well, a little further back, I worked there at this center in the mountains of Arizona where people would come in with diabetes type 2 and all kinds of drugs and leave with our veganically grown food, our live food cuisine. They call it rainbow green cuisine. It just worked so well in this pristine multimodal environment. And I was so touched as the assistant to the director there and a teacher there, very impacted. And sometimes I'd cry myself to sleep in gratitude for getting to see the transformations of the people who came there, going home without all those drugs with, if it was diabetes, like their blood sugar in a normal range in 7 to 28 days. And even was part of making this documentary called Simply Raw, Reversing Diabetes in 30 Days that you may have seen. Anybody seen that? Cool, great. So with all that experience, I still wondered, like we were a place with 24 beds, and they were usually mostly full, but, and they didn't spend much time in bed, just say 24 spaces for participating. But why so small really? With the 80 million people with prediabetes or diabetes in America, or over 100 million if you count the heart issues and beyond, and then 500 million in the whole world dealing with these chronic degenerative diseases that are so preventable. Why were we so small? Like 16 to 24 people per week. I felt that the potential was vaster. And I really wanted to know what was it about the people that came and had a fulfilling experience and had a successful outcome there that was common to those people. You know, same country, same world, everything is basically the same about them. But some were choosing to come with that for that experience. There was an economic part of it, I'm sure. But even in the world, there's people that choose a holistic route and a vegan route eventually for their healing, and those who chose a pharmaceutical route. And I have no judgment. I think it's important for me as a coach and author to be judgment-free, but I just noticed the difference, which is that you gain back the 11 potential years of life that are lost on average if you go down the degenerative health route. You gain that back, and it's not just the amount of years, but it's the quality of those years that you can share and see what you really care about, grow up, the kids and grandkids, and be on your purpose without the impediments of your pharmaceutical dependence. Those are all really important things that are an option. So it was important to me to find out what was it about the personality qualities, the mindset attributes of the people that made that investment in themselves. So to find out, there was a master's program there that I enrolled in, and it's called the Master's in Spiritual Nutrition. The spiritual part meaning it's who you're being when you come to your nutrition, just as much as what your nutrition is when you put it inside you. So I was very interested in that field, and my master's thesis was a 250-person survey of about 3 different sources of people. Graduates from the Tree of Life program who obviously chose a very holistic and vegan approach. The middle ground was like people that subscribed to natural health and vegan magazines, and they sent out the survey. And then there was the conventional route that probably weren't doing much different than what they were doing when they fell sick, but those were clinics and hospitals that also sent out my survey. So they all answered the survey, and not only was it what you've done with your food and how have your health outcomes been, but also questions like, the questions would tell me what about their personality was active at this time in their life. Questions about their proactivity in life, how sensitive they are to their emotions and other people's emotions, how much compassion they tend to show in their life. But I'm not going to actually tell you what the actual, I'm going to have you guess. What do you think the most conducive personal characteristics were to the most fulfilling health choices and outcomes? So the question is for you to raise your hand if you volunteer. Empathy. Okay. Really, really good hypothesis. It wasn't what my top 4, it wasn't one of the top 4. Although it kind of is in a synonym, but good. Any other guesses?
Volunteerism?
Something like that was very key also. She said volunteerism, which was and another synonym maybe for the agency part, which was a big part of it. Yeah.
Self-esteem.
Yeah. So there are, these are synonyms. They're all synonyms for, there's a psychometric terms that, I worked with a psychometric statistician because it was hard to do that without training and really what the psychologists say about these things. Maybe you're more right than they are, but certain words were the right terms. Any other guesses?
Something about being inner motivated rather than outer motivated. I don't know
Oh,
what
okay.
it is for that, but it's
Interested in like the experience as much as the outcome, maybe, or
having to do with it. You're inner directed.
Introspection?
Not introspection. That you're motivated internally rather than reacting from
Okay.
externally.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, you're really dancing right close to around it. Was there one more guess? Yeah.
Critical thinking.
That's an interesting one, actually. So I'll tell you what the top 2, and then go ahead.
Compassion for yourself?
Compassion for yourself. Okay. Yeah. And these are really good words. I think you get the concept. But what we found, if we use the terms that I borrowed from psychometrics, we found that emotional maturity was one of them, which I believe really circles around these types of inwardly motivated and compassion for yourself, and agency, which also quite similar to this idea of volunteerism, and then the other 2 of the top 4 were having a support group, like the tendency to form groups that you do things with rather than be a total lone wolf all the time. And finally was a diverse streams of information, that you would form your own syntheses of the information around you rather than listening to one source of information dogmatically, which is a little bit like critical thinking. So you all really kind of nailed it. Great. And so there I was graduating, the thesis passed, I was there, and I was at the luncheon after the graduation ceremony, and with a cohort friend of mine named Mike Chait, and he says to me, Michael, so let me hear, I just heard you present your thesis. You've been working here for all these years, 5.5 years, working with clients. You helped make this documentary film, and you have your future ahead of you. And I think what you've written is really interesting data. It'd be very useful to psychologists, maybe, to other counselors and helpers, like about these qualities of the person. But you could reach 1,000 times more people if you wrote it in a parable. He was comparing it to books like, he was a big fan of the 1 Minute Manager, which is like a short parable on a person whose father is suddenly incapacitated and he has to like learn how to be a manager of his business. And he goes around learning from different people things that are tips so he can succeed. And then there's also the Celestine Prophecy, which is the novel of spiritual development and on an adventure, all these types of novels. He said, do that, and you'll reach all these people that need the help, the 80 million people that are suffering and keeping, obviously, the side effect, or one of the main issues is that it's destroying the lives of animals and the environment at the same time as destroying our health and our human health. So he says you can really make a bigger difference if you write what you found in something that could be popular, maybe even turned into a TV movie drama or something with vivid characters and give it life. So I'm going to pause if anyone has any questions or comments already about anything I've said so far.
I love it.
Well, thank you. I'd love to hear that feedback. Anything else?
So you're trying to do what Dan
Millman, yeah.
with Peaceful Warrior.
Totally,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Parable. Absolutely, parable, yeah. So what I did for a device, and everything is actually quite symbolic if you kind of look at it, even the title. So the title is Sweet Healing. Why would it be sweet healing? Any guess about that? So there's 3 levels of triple entendre to it, right? Someone said fruit, which of course, fruits are amazing foods, and they certainly convey a sweetness in their taste, for sure. Secondly, these diseases like diabetes, mellitus, even the mellitus comes from the Latin word for sweet, and they, in the past, diagnosed it by smelling the urine and blood and like seeing if you have an issue with processing sugars. And then finally, of course, those moments I was sobbing in gratitude for seeing the transformation that people have when they leave the tree of life or when they've been there for a few days or weeks was very sweet to them especially, and to me, and to the life they'll get to live. So that's kind of where I came from with the name. And by the way, while I was there, I fielded a lot of phone calls from people after they went home. They would go home to traffic suddenly and jobs and kids and having to shop for their own food and prepare it and family and everything. So suddenly living at this perfect retreat center for their healing was no longer their context. So it was important to me to write this book in a way with several different devices which would make these ways of living that were possible to live in an ideal setting come out of the grittiness of the everyday setting. So this is in a medium-sized town, perhaps in the Rust Belt. It's not really named any particular city. I actually do name it Middletown, but it's meant to be a town. Could it be in the middle of anywhere? They have these rather blue-collar lives and talk about rather mainstream things. But in the process, out of those lives come clues that begin to emerge. Clues which I love being a novelist who can give away the last page of the novel, because that's where the clues are solved. By the end of the mystery, the clues are revealed. And of course, I didn't write this to hide any of the tips and foundational practices, so I wanted to write the foundational practices in a way that would come out. And as the mystery proceeds, eventually, they go from having this space, which was this box that had empty indentations. They find, where did this box come from? It just kind of appeared in a mysterious way. And as the mystery goes on and the characters kind of get into the mystery and integrate the clues into actually living it, eventually at the end, out come the final 7 foundational clues, 7 foundational practices, which are, I'm happy to tell you, one is obviously food and the way you eat and take in nutrients and water. I'll tell you what that was. What worked so well was this rainbow green cuisine idea, eating the rainbow, eating food that's fresh and vital and grown organically and served with love. The next stone is service to fellow beings, which of course is a part of every major healing tradition, because what happens when you serve is you actually get out of yourself for a second, so the stress level goes down because you're actually no longer stressing about yourself, you're serving. Plus, the mirror neurons kick in that say you matter to someone else and something else than yourself, a bigger system. So it's a deep subconscious message to, oh, you matter, your life is important. So it sends healing subconscious thoughts deep down. And then physical exercise and mental exercise is a stone, which of course is kind of self-explanatory. A quiet mind lets the healing powers of your body go out of the thoughts you're spinning on over and over into, if you ever have a quiet mind, you actually can feel the vitality course through your body. And it's another major part of the Tree of Life's healing processes and a major part of the world's traditional healing processes is get present, get the mind quiet and present so you can feel the life force pulsing through and healing you. Cultivating radiant joy, like the whole idea that laughter is the best medicine, it's a real thing. And the whole idea of you ever see that YouTube film called The Bodhisattva on the B Train? It is this fun video where a crowded rush hour train is going through, like in Chicago or something, and there is one monk-looking person who sort of, for no reason, starts laughing, just like this existential, non-causal bellow laugh. And then people look like, what's going on? But then the whole row starts, and then eventually the entire car is this, car of laughter and joy going down the tracks. And it's a very healing situation. So. And then, of course, I have energetics, which refers to everything from what your acupuncturist knows about your meridians to what your massage therapist knows about touch and those kinds of things. There's lots of levels to energetics and healing. And finally, naturalistic hygiene and protection, which is everything from what you put on your body being not made from killing things, plus not pesticided and poisonous and artificial, but basically being something you would eat, going on your skin, through your, filtering your shower perhaps, all these different levels of your natural hygiene around you and your protection. So how does it work? How does Rainbow Green Life Food Cuisine work so well that it would be proven again and again to the point where I was confident, and all the people that wrote praise of the book, all these professionals are confident that a novel is actually speaking the truth when it writes, it's a fictional novel based on these 200 people and my own clients. So what works about it is that you're turning on your genes, the genes that are often, so Dr. Steven Spidler from the University of California, Riverside has this study which was shown that 21 days of insufficient nutrition, too much toxins, and too much stress will turn off the genes that make antioxidants, genes that make enzymes, genes that make proteins, and they can be switched back on though, which basically turns your genetic code into a anti-cancer, anti-diabetes, anti-depression genetic situation in 21 days of good nutrition, reducing toxins, and managing stress. So that's a proven fact. And then of course 21 days was the average time people spent at the Tree of Life, so no kidding, it also worked there when they're in this perfect environment. So obviously, I named the main character, one of the three main characters, Gene. This is a very important point for me, that you're actually healing your own, you can change your phenotype. Your genotype is the code you got from your parents. It's why we're alive. It's wonderful that you have your genes. But people think they got this condition, so I'm going to also. But you can actually really have a large say in switching that. Therefore, Gene's partner is named what? Well, hope. So Gene and hope are like this battery that basically describe that your genes can be fed in a new way and your lifestyle can change into a new pattern that can basically turn your genes back on in a way that's, again, anti-inflammation, anti-diabetes, and so forth. So, and then, the device of the stones appear. After the very beginning of the book is actually acknowledging the feelings, talking about the emotional vulnerability being one of the key characteristics of fulfilling health outcomes. The first few chapters acknowledge the despair and the shame and the defeatism that you can feel if you're, basically Gene's on the brink of retirement, wants to, basically just enjoy life, but suddenly they're confronted with this diagnosis. So all the feelings are real. He goes from denial to acceptance in the first few chapters, which is really huge. And And only then, out of the woodwork, do all the clues start coming in, and there's a pair of mentors who appears, which gives advice in a very natural way. They don't really have to talk about anything they don't already know. So Hope's job, by the way, is a wildlife biologist. She's full of expertise in how nature works out there, in the hills and the birds and so forth, in the forests, but has never really applied it to how nature works in the food system and in our own inner ecosystem. And so she's able to apply the expertise. One of my points is that we all have expertise in us. I made her a very, kind of a normal person with that particular expertise. And then Gene's job is an electrician. He understands electricity and energy, and he can talk in the terms about those things. And of course, he gets it. For example, when you take in like pure high fructose corn syrup, he gets that that's like a power surge going through, blowing out the circuits of a house. But now he grows to understand that that's like doing that to your own body. I'm going to pause for any comments or questions thus far again. I feel like there's only like 50 minutes to talk, and it's a little rushed, so I feel like I'm talking fast. And I usually have an hour and a half, but this is fine. Yes?
Were Gene and Hope dating?
Gene and Hope are nearly 60, and they are the parents, so they're more than dating. They're the parents of Jim. It's a great question, because actually, it's a great question, because I did feel that romance actually was a part that drives the story forward too, keeps it interesting. Love, of course, you could say makes the world go round and is why you'd want to transform in the first place, why you'd want to change the way you relate to animals, change the way you relate to food from love. So of course, it's most physicalized and most embodied perhaps in romantic love. So that's a key theme of the book. Obviously it's not X-rated, but there are romantic scenes. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Great. Okay. So again, I was on the phone a lot with people at the Tree of Life, going home to traffic and shopping and all that, and work, and I realized that I wanted to understand lasting change as opposed to the workshop high, the workshop change. Oh, it's perfect to eat a whole live food vegan diet when it's provided for you in an ideal environment. But what is a lasting change when you are the proactive, there's that agency quality again. What's it like when you are the driver of it? So I found a study that MIT and Harvard did together with the city of Cambridge, and it was a study on lasting change. And of course, they did it about municipal change, like how to make a community shift to where they wanted it in terms of, voter participation or crime or recreational activity, participation, all that stuff, and make it last. Not just do it for a season, but really make it last. Of course, I think it can be applied to habits, diet, and health. And I found this study, and it made, these Harvard people are supposedly pretty smart. They have 4 very simple tools of what lasting change really is composed of, in terms of the qualities of lasting change. So, they all turn out to be quite vividly portrayed in Sweet Healing. These 4 are, have a goal, actually name the goal that you actually would want. In many cases, it has to do with the health level you want, or the way you would feel, or your ethics come into line, like with your behavior, whatever your goal is. 2, commit to that goal. Actually generate the feeling and demonstration of commitment to it, whatever that is. Just really put your heart into that goal. I love that particular part, because how many times does Harvard and MIT talk about putting your heart into it? But, 3rd was have a physical place where the practices that will help get you to that goal will take place in. Because if they're going to happen, they're going to happen somewhere. So in the case, they were talking about, have a place on the map where you build the rec center and the pool and so forth. But in our case, in my case, with my interest and my clients and so forth, it may be the place is this part of the counter where I chop the celery and the cabbage. It's here, where I store my sprouts or whatever, or my vegetables is in this shelf in the refrigerator right there. You know, where I go running or is on that trail there, and where I practice my yoga is that spot on the floor there. Like, it's an actual physical place. And that's because it takes place in a city with like a real context like that. There's always a sense of place. And fourth, oh, by the way, your inner self is a place too. So this is key for a few reasons. Like, the environmentalist or ecologist in us, if you see yourselves as a place, and you wouldn't want the polluting aspects of toxic meat in your environment, or you wouldn't want the polluting aspects of pesticides and artificial flavors and so forth in your body, you would see it as that. And even more so, you can actually have an awareness of yourself as a place as you live your day. Like, oh, okay, for example, like, if you're simply going to a food counter, right, there's several different, restaurants. Like, okay, the junk food and fast food is here, where they sell burgers or whatever, is like, but I'm going to go here, where there's a salad. I mean, it's basically like, it's that simple. And even more so, there's the inner space of like, oh, I feel like the healing that needs to happen for me if I'm blocked, say, in the my absorption isn't working very well, or my insulin isn't being excreted very well, or whatever. You can actually feel a bit of time. You can feel that place inside yourself and focus energy on it being healed and opened up. So that's something that all these different levels of place. And finally, their fourth level of lasting change is arrange life's circumstances to support your goal. A lot of times on the phone it would be like, oh, the circumstances are such where this doesn't work anymore. So, but what they found at Harvard was, if you choose to arrange life circumstances, that means basically three things. People, like who you're around, are they back? Do they have your back? Do they support you? Do they want you to succeed? Or are they mocking you and tearing you down for your goals? So that's one circumstance you can control to some degree, and control it as much as you can. Two is budget. Money is a circumstance, and if you budget, if you really want your goal, you would put your budget, you would rearrange it so that this payment can maybe go down, so this payment can go up. Whether it's the need for, again, shopping at the organic place, or whatever it may be, that you can arrange your budget. And finally, the third is time. People say, I'm too busy to concentrate on going vegan, or too busy to concentrate on sprouting, or too busy to concentrate on preparing my food for the next 3 days. But if you arrange your time in your calendar, then that can be done. So just basically have a goal, put your heart and soul into it, have the physical place where the practices to that goal will take place, and arrange life's circumstances. And I was fortunate because I found out about that study after starting the book, but all the four are pretty well vividly portrayed in Sweet Healing. So I think I have a few more minutes. Definitely, right? Definitely, yeah. I'm going to read a little bit, but any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead.
You came up with this strategy, which you say you'd like to reach more people.
Yeah.
How will you measure your success with this strategy?
Oh, great question. He asked, how will I measure the success of my strategy in reaching more people with what's possible for them? And I will measure it in people spoken to, people who read Sweet Healing and my sequels, and people who tell me or report on some reviewing method that it made an impact in their life, and they are in the process of engaging with food and health differently. And if I don't get that report directly, I'd like to. It's a little bit like Simply Raw, the movie that came out in 2009. How do I know it made a difference? Yes, there were 1.6 million views of it, and it was, I think a lot of people got something from it, and it was one of a series of a generation of films that came out around that time, with May I Be Frank and Super Size Me and other things like that. I think it made a difference. I think that was a big turning point in the. Actually, new cases of type 2 diabetes have actually begun to plateau. So I think education does work. So I can measure it, and if it starts to come down, and my book gets more and more read and adapted into a TV film, then I'll know that it's working. Yeah.
So sequels, there's going to be sequels?
Yeah. So there's 4 generations I mentioned. So there's Jean and Hope, and there's one of their grandmothers, Sylvia, and in the generation after them, there's Jim and Dana, who meet each other, And thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, I didn't. My mailing list was going around. I hope it's still going around. Oh, yeah. Feel free to pass that around if you'd like to hear about the sequels and other talks and books. So the sequel. I'm very excited about the sequel. I'll focus more on the kids in the sequel. This was about the baby boomers getting well. The sequel is going to be more about the young people growing up, where they've seen what's possible already and the danger you can run into if you don't wake up at a young age, and what's life like for them when they wake up at a younger age. So. So, any other questions or thoughts, or would you like me to read a little bit of it? Or, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. And one thing I read is the prologue. And remember, my job in writing this was to actually bring people a sense of story, as much as there's really other books you can read for just pure vegan facts and pure nutrition facts. Literally, you can learn nutrition facts from one of our other speakers. That's his website, which is great. I wanted to bring people a sense of of the characters first. So that's what's in the prologue. There's very little in the way of nutrition information in the prologue, but it does come out throughout the book. Yeah.
I have one more question, which is, what made you think you could write a novel? I mean, it doesn't sound like it was in your background.
Yeah.
Like it was just this.
The moment he said,
natural, could you just do it?
the moment he said to me, "You'd reach more people," and he just described it very slowly. Yeah, do a parable like the 1 Minute Manager, and give people a sense of the development of people over time. And as he was saying that, I was like, I know that story by the back of my hand. Like, I can do this. And suddenly, it was like I almost saw the characters come through. Like it was like, oh, yeah. And then I just spent the next 3 years kind of writing out parts of the story, and they all began to intersect with each other.
So you didn't have to go like study creative writing or anything like that. You just like wrote out the story.
I think I did, and I was able to with having been a documentary filmmaker. I knew the arc of a story.
Okay, so there's some.
Yeah.
Some background.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I got better, and I still have a lot of bettering to get with my next book. But yeah. So, good question. Thank you. Okay, so the prologue is the questions that always run through my mind. One more thing. It's a framed story. So it's like a story within a story within a story. So this is the furthest future flash that there is, and there's flashbacks in the book. So this is the furthest future point, and this is the son speaking. And then, of course, in the regular first chapter, it's back 20 years earlier, and it's the more of the story of the father and mother when they were younger. So, okay, the questions that always run through my mind. Did I pay enough attention? Did I complete my part? I don't know. I was barely 20 at the time. Had the specialness of the opportunity dawned on me? And did I listen to the small voice guiding me to receive and carry on my father's example of compassion, strength, and humility? Did I let the day my dad's world went dark make its mark on me? And did I comprehend the value of life and understand what would grow to be my mother and father's passions? As I wondered, a pink ray of light shone through the wispy clouds, streamed in through the window, and outlined the white hair of the woman sitting next to me. Her aged features glowed in the late morning sunshine. Her name was Hope. "Mom," I got her attention gently, "can you believe my little girls are the same age now that I was back when, well, you know." After a pause, as though gathering her thoughts, my mother said, "As I suspect you remember, your father had a motto from the first day I met him, his battle cry and calling card. He would proclaim it in triumph at the end of every job he completed. You know, he was one good electrician. He even shouted it on the day we moved into our own home in the foothills, after he wired the power circuits for our own house." "Flipping the switch releases the power," I said, conjuring Dad. "That's his saying, right?" "Yes, son, that's the one." As I grew to know your father, I realized that he wasn't just referring to the moment when he finished wiring a building and flipped on the switches that lit the lights and sent the ventilation pumps a-whirring. Well, what else did he mean? I asked. See, when you came around, he was starting to get big downtown high-rise contracts. But when I met your father, he was doing electrical work for the poorest housing at the edges of town. Each time he finished a job, he'd say it proudly, "Flipping the switch releases the power." And now that's like starting to display this characteristic of proactivity and agency there. When your father and I began to get close to each other, he told me he was referring to his own personal power, his personal drive to rise out of and beyond his origins. So with each switch, he was laying it on the line to build up a stronger foundation for his goals and dreams, which fortunately included me and then you. Your father and I even had the vision that we would be grandparents one day. See, I am closer to 50 than 40 myself, married for a quarter century to my sweetheart, Dana. But I still look at my father's way of life and the way he worked with a little bit of juvenile awe and definitely man-to-man respect. Hey, Mom, there's one thing I haven't told a soul before, but I've been feeling like it's time to let it out. I inched toward the edge of my seat as I spoke, and I noticed my mom glance up. I continued. Dana and I, well, we wanted the way that Dad went through his ordeal to be alive in our lives. We wanted what he learned to help shape the way we lived and how our kids were raised. We wanted to share Dad's journey with friends and coworkers who can relate to, when Dad went through with his health and eating, and be an influence on them. I'm pleased you had that desire, Mom said. Well, there's actually more than that. Young and buzzing with excitement about our new love of each other, Dana and I were simultaneously witnesses to you and Dad and the whole ordeal. So, without anyone noticing, we recorded and documented the details of everything that happened with you and Dad and turned it all into a book. In other words, Mom, you've been novelized. My goodness, she said, suddenly looking both happy and wistful, as if she too were now yearning to remember it all, to let it flood back in. She appeared on the edge of something reawakening. There was no turning back. This book had to get out. Want to read it, Mom? I asked, already standing up to walk across the room to my home office. I opened a cabinet door and pulled out a blue binder with golden engravings, inside of which we had bound the sole existing printout of this book. Only recently, at long last, and after scores of hours of labor, had Dana and I fleshed out the whole story. I placed the binder on the coffee table in front of Mom. Take all the time you want, Mom, I said. A little chai, please, if you wouldn't mind, son. I'm going to be here for a while. And with a wrinkled left forefinger and thumb, Mom gently opened the first page and tilted her nurturing eyes down to read. And then the journey begins on the next page. So. Thank you. Thank you so much. It means a ton to me. So thank you for spending this time, and may the goals of health and an ethical, harmonious world, live through us and all of our loved ones, and the best we can do together. So, if you have any questions, I'm here. I'll sign the books. They are $15, and I'd be honored. So, thank you so much. Other questions while we're here?
What's your vision for humanity?
Read the book. Read the book.
Well, it is in some way expressed through the book, actually. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of subtle things in the book about, one character named Patrick is a security professional. He typically just a security guard who runs a security guard company. But in the process of his awakening, he actually includes safety and security with the way we treat animals and with the way we farm and grow food and serve one another food. So even the vision of every occupation, every body's role, sort of just shifting to that consciousness that, ahimsa, do no harm, and you don't have to change that much. The characters they still like baseball, they still like cars and so forth, but they do it in a way that's shifted like in a spiral of where they're at, but it's a spiral up in awareness. So, yeah, thank you. Yes?
I have a vegan book club up in Santa Rosa, and we've only read one fictional thing so far, Off the Reservation, but I'm wondering if you feel like your book would be appropriate for that. I mean, we read serious things like How Not to Die,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, why we love, I can never get this right, why we love dogs, eat pigs, and wear cows. We've done some serious things, and sometimes I feel like we need some relief, like in a story.
It would so be right on for that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'll be here until I run out of books, and then my table is at the far corner on the right side of the hall.
And so are they available on Amazon or on your?
They are available on Amazon in this form, in audio form, and in e-form.
And can be ordered through local bookstores?
They're at, in Berkeley there's a local bookstore that has
for
it.
me, local Sonoma County,
Yeah.
like Copperfields or?
You can order them. I'm sure you can order them.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good.
I'll have to get them shipped in there.
Thank
you. You're welcome. Thanks. Yeah, I think people are peeking in for the next. I'm not sure where we're at in time. I don't know, but thank you. I'll be here.